Introduction. In biology, while the subject is very interesting on the surface, a lot of people don't recognize the role size plays in it. Size plays a huge role, and it's amazing how complex everything is on every scale of life, from the ecosystems of the deepest oceans to the billions of DNA pairs in a single cell. What's also interesting is that even in biology, math and relationships control how things interact. It's incredible how complex life is. In this video, you will learn about the fascinating relationships between small and large, as well as how math makes science much simpler. Organism interactions and ecosystems. The largest biomes are connected to the tiniest strands of DNA. Organisms are adapted to the biome they inhabit, meaning their bodies are designed to survive in their environment. However, in order to get these adaptations, their DNA needs to be coded in a specific way. For example, in this drawing, the bird that migrated to the forest adapted to the forest's colors over time. Because birds with a mutation for red feathers survived, the species as a whole in the forest became red-feathered. The DNA of the general bird population in that forest was shaped by the forest's colors. It goes the other way too. Without the plants, the entire ecosystem would be different. Food chains identify who eats in an environment, and in every environment. It starts off with something small, producers in the forest food chain. The tiny plants support every animal. The plant feeds the squirrel, which feeds the snake, which feeds the wolf. From small to large, the forest stays afloat. Let's not forget about proportional relationships. The predator-prey cycle is an obvious example of how math simplifies a complex concept of biology. Predators are animals who eat prey to grow and reproduce, but in any given area, like this forest, there isn't an infinite amount of prey. When the predators multiply, prey numbers shrink, and when there reaches a point when the amount of prey isn't enough to sustain the large predator population, the predator population decreases, until the prey population could grow again, and also the predators. Matter and energy in ecosystems. Global warming is mainly caused by large-scale fossil fuel consumption, like factories, but another cause often talked about is transportation. It's important to recognize how the choice to drive by one individual out of 1 billion drivers contributes to the world's heating. The tiny speck in the huge amount of cars combines with the other billion specks to create a huge global problem. It's shocking how the increase of temperatures alone can cause so much trouble. While it may be subtle now, if humans don't change, what effects global warming already has will be exacerbated, and it won't be so easy to go back. The effects climate change has in nature includes animal migration, rising sea levels, flooded cities, forest fires, wilting crops, and harsher allergy seasons. While a warmer temperature seems small, its effects are anything but. Logistic population growth is a numerical relationship between a population and its resources. As a species grows, its growth will become faster because there's more of them to reproduce. However, their maximum population is defined by the carrying capacity, which is the number of organisms in the species that makes their amount of resources unable to support their population. When this is reached, the population will decrease until it has enough resources to thrive again. Cell structure and cancer. As complex global warming and ecosystems are, it may surprise you that tiny cells are even more complex than both those subjects. Cells contain a myriad of different organelles, all working together to produce protein and keep the organism alive. These include the mitochondria, which powers the cell, the ribosomes, where mRNA is translated to produce protein, the nucleus, which controls how each organelle operates, the chromosomes, which the DNA is assorted, the cell membrane, which controls what enters and leaves the cells, and obviously more. It's clear that size doesn't matter when it comes to life's complexity. Speaking of cells, all parts of the organism are connected, large and small. From the actual organism to its billions of DNA pairs, everything depends on everything else. The cells make up tissues, which makes up the organs, which make up organ systems, which make up the organism. We depend so much on tiny things, yet we forget how important they are. Cancer is when a mutation spreads to other cells and makes them useless, while it multiplies and shuts down whole organ systems. Despite its morbidity, cancer is another worthwhile example of scale in biology. Though just one cell becomes mutated, the mutation could spread to important organ systems and eventually kill the organism. Genetics and DNA. Protein synthesis results in the creation of amino acids, building blocks for protein. This is another example of the intricate workings of cells. It starts off with mRNA being created and sent out of the nucleus and into the ribosome, which translates the mRNA into amino acids. Amino acids are minuscule, but with trillions of cells producing them, the results become much more visible. Not only are cells elaborate at their size, but something even similar, DNA, is more elaborate. These next drawings will highlight the complex systems involving their organization. DNA is made up of billions of base pairs of nucleotides that determine how an organism is made. Every human, while being different from one another, is made unique by any differences in base pairs. Our DNA is all incredibly similar, but within the trillions of base pairs in a human, there are tiny base pair mutations that make us different in a ton of categories. Traits are passed down through generations. For example, a gene for a third leg can be passed somewhere to the billions of base pairs in the parent's offspring. The crazy thing is that it's only one gene. While yes, it shows up in every cell in the child because of how cells replicate, but even in each individual cell, the gene for the third leg is a needle in a haystack. Yet in the end, that child will have a third leg. Obviously an unrealistic example, but you get the point. Natural selection and evolution. Phylogenetic trees organize the many ancestors of organisms. It's overwhelming how old everything is. Over time, things evolve based on environmental changes. The earliest ancestor of the elephant is the earliest ancestor of the elephant is the Trilophodon, who lived 26 million years ago. During its time, it had 4 tusks instead of 2. However, due to them being less necessary, the elephant became a species diverging from the Trilophodon, one with only 2 tusks, and the elephant is the only species grown from the Trilophodon. Many of this planet's ancestors split into thousands of different species. This shows how one ancestor, due to differing environments and planetary changes, can diverge into a very diverse and enormous set of animals millions of years later. If a trait given to an animal helps them survive over other animals in their species, these advantages can be as small as a slightly larger beak. Point is, tiny changes can make a huge difference in the longevity of a species. If a species with surviving features dies, then that species wasn't meant to be. However, small things like sharper claws for hunting or rotating ears for predator detection can be a crucial factor to a species' survival and can shape them into familiar animals today. These microevolutions are small in the grander scheme of things. While this cat may have changed its claws at some point, it's hard to believe that from this tiny cat emerged a huge tiger. Well, microevolutions stack to create huge changes from ancestor to evolved species. Remember, evolution happens over millions of years. It's less surprising because there is a lot of time for these animals to evolve, but the difference between the cat and the tiger is made up of tiny microevolutions, traits that helped the cat survive in its new environment. Transition from cat to tiger shows how when microevolutions are combined, a huge difference is made. Conclusion. In conclusion, biology's intricacy is not exclusive to large ecosystems. It spans all sizes. In the rainforest, complexities can be found in relationships between its wildlife, the inner workings of their organs, and the protein construction from the cells and DNA. Biology also doesn't let sizes act independently. Every aspect of life is connected despite size differences. The DNA in a monkey's cells form its skin and its many adaptations. The monkey's environment makes certain mutations in DNA favorable, therefore controlling its population. Biology is all about interconnectedness, and the scale that it encompasses led people to forget about that. But let's always remember that large or small, everything depends on everything.